right, hello everyone. I'm trying to make sure that we are live, and I just want to verify that since we don't have anyone watching yet, which is a little bit odd. So there we go. Now we have someone watching. Okay, so that means that we are live. Well, hello. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is Left Bank Books Presents Online. Former Congresswoman Katie Hill in conversation with founder and director of Progress Women and former Missouri State Representative Stacey Newman to celebrate the book She Will Rise. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore, celebrating 51 years this year. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Katie Hill and Stacey Newman, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We have adapted to the current situation and are bringing you the things that you love the most about Left Bank Books, with curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world even. We are happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We were one of the first in the country to do so. And we believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. This event definitely fits that bill and is very incredibly important right now. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Katie Hill and Left Bank Books by purchasing a copy for you or all of your friends at left-bank.com. When you purchase a copy of the book from us, you help support this event series, you help keep this going so that we can do more events that you can enjoy. But it also helps keep our bookstore and staff here through the most unusual of times. So we thank you so much for your support. Another thing that you can buy from Left Bank Books, you can also buy one of these LGBT vote pins as well that I proudly wear on my little cardigan blazer type situation. Love it. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the event, so type your questions as a comment. You can do that at any point throughout the event, and we will get to those at the end. And you can be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. Former Congresswoman Katie Hill shares her experience with misogyny and double standards in politics to help women topple the long-standing power structures that prevent them from achieving equality. Powerful women who dare to make mistakes still face swifter and more brutal consequences than men, as the events that precipitated Congressional Representative Katie Hill's resignation, in which she was the victim of revenge porn, clearly demonstrate. But Katie Hill does not want women to be discouraged from taking positions of power. In fact, the rampant misogyny we see is all the more reason for women to lead, to work to change the systems that have kept old, wealthy white men in power for far too long. In this book, to be published a week before it was published a week before the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, Katie Hill looks back on the progress we've made and outlines her battle plan for our future. She details how we can overcome the obstacles holding women back from achieving equal representation in positions of power to create the change we want for the next century. What challenges do women face in the modern era, and what battles do we need to fight in the years to come? Katie Hill is ready to equip readers for the front lines of leadership in all arenas to guide women in becoming the warriors we need to shape this country for the better. Kristen Bell, beloved actor and activist, I love, says about the book, so many of us feel disenchanted with the lack of gender equality in public office and high positions of power. We know that things feel imbalanced, but we don't know what to do about it. Katie has endured many trials and tribulations in her fight for this battle. Using her experience, she provides real answers and a roadmap toward equal representation, and She Will Rise. This book serves as an inspiration and a utility tool for anyone who thinks the current system in which we operate needs to shift. Katie Hill wasn't yet 30 when she embarked on her run for Congress. By 31, she had not only become a member of Congress, but a member of congressional leadership. Soon she was the subject of an HBO docuseries entitled She's Running, a frequent and ratings-generating cable news guest and one of the Democratic Party's brightest rising stars. Her campaign attracted the support of dozens of celebrities, including Kristen Bell, Chelsea Handler, Alyssa Milano, and Chris Evans, and she managed to flip a congressional seat under decades of Republican control. She was the first woman to hold the seat and the first openly LGBTQ plus woman to be elected to Congress from California. She resigned from her position less than a year after entering Congress following a scandal that began a national conversation around questions of bisexuality, domestic abuse, cyber exploitation, workplace power dynamics, and what happens when regular people who live regular lives run for office. And tonight, Katie will be in conversation with Stacey Newman. Stacey Newman is founder and director of Progress Women, a statewide social justice organization that since 2011 has focused on reproductive rights, gun violence, criminal justice, and voting rights. She recently retired as a Missouri state representative in St. Louis County from 2010 to 2018, serving as the chair of the House Progressive Caucus. And Stacey is a powerhouse in the state of Missouri. I love this pair and think that it is going to be an incredible conversation. So I'm very happy to be able to welcome Katie Hill and Stacey Newman for Left Bank Books. If you would all please give them a very hearty round of applause from your house, from your home, welcoming them to the screen.
Thanks,
Hello.
Shane. Hello.
Thanks, Shane. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Well, hi, Katie. We can start this off. It's so nice to meet you, like even virtually. You and I have only known each other here for about 5 minutes, but I want to thank you for doing this event with us. And Left Bank Books, our St. Louis's favorite independent bookstore, and also our longtime progressive friends. So, as a former legislator myself, I truly enjoyed your book. It's an incredible story of running for office and then the unimaginable nightmare of what happened next. But before we get too far, I first want to ask you how you're doing, especially now, these COVID times, and all of us with the news of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. How is your week going?
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a rough year. My mom had to have brain surgery, and this is 2 months after I resigned, and then my brother passed away. He was 20 years old. I was the one who found him. I did CPR on him, and 2020 really is just for so many people, right? It's just the year of all horrors. But I feel like I'm on the upswing. My family's healthy and safe now, and I think we just keep putting one foot on one foot after the other, and keep going. And I'm on a road trip now, so I've gotten to see some of the country and I've gotten away from the cities, and that's been nice. So thank you. I appreciate that. I'm doing well. Hope you are too.
Well, great. Well, good. Yeah, it's been a hard week, particularly with RBG, but yes, I'm glad you're on a road trip, because I think that does a lot too for our heads sometimes, just getting out. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you write in your book about your decision to run for Congress in 2018, never have running for office before. Tell us a little bit about what led you to actually diving in, because that's that scary thing we encourage other women to do.
Yeah. Well, I was not planning on running for office, right? Like, this wasn't something that I anticipated or prepped for or anything like that. I was running an organization called PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, which is the largest homeless services organization in California. And so I had worked on the front lines to address this crisis, really. And, I saw how these systemic issues that we were failing at as a society were causing this issue of homelessness, and that we weren't going to be able to truly solve the homelessness and the associated issues if we didn't address the broader systemic changes that need to happen. But that all really came to a head when Donald Trump won in 2016. And I saw that everything that we had worked so hard for, the progress that we had made, was in jeopardy with a Republican House and Senate. And I decided, I have to do something. And I wanted to get involved in, I knew that the next thing that I could do was help with the congressional race. So I looked up where the closest swing district was. And it turns out it was the district that I'd spent my whole life in, that I lived in then. I had always thought of that as a Republican seat. I did not think, it didn't even occur to me that that was going to be one of the swing districts, but it was. It turned out that Hillary Clinton had won by nearly 7 points. And yet the Republican member of Congress had still won. So I was like, great, I'm going to find a way of getting involved. And then I didn't like the person who was running. He was the one who'd run before. He was, not from the area, and I just didn't think he could win. So I'm complaining about this, and I'm saying I want to find a woman that I can support. And finally, a friend of mine, a mentor, said, Katie, why don't you run? And it wasn't even something that had occurred to me before. And finally, I thought about it a lot, and I was like, well, you know what? This is a crazy time. Why don't I?
Well, that's interesting, because so many of us remember that actual light bulb moment.
Yeah.
When someone actually asks us, and we always say, well, you don't have to be asked, but we'll always remember that question, right? Because you're thinking, okay, maybe.
Yeah. I know.
So
yeah, and that's something that's unique to women, really. I mean, I'm sure maybe some men don't have to, or also have to be asked, but a lot of men there's surveys that have shown this in Congress, that the majority of men have said for the reason that they did it, the reason that they're serving is because they've always wanted to be a politician. And that's just not the case with women. It's usually that, something has happened that led them to want to serve their community or to bring back resources. And I say great if a woman, or anyone really wants to run for office or whatever, but I would say we often have better reasons for doing it.
Exactly. Well, like you mentioned, you successfully beat the GOP incumbent, flipping the seat to blue in that marvelous 2018, national blue wave. What was your next step? After you won the election, how did you prepare then to actually be in Congress? Because as you know, with legislating is a whole different job than campaigning.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of time, that's for sure. So we, as the freshman class in 2018, we were a very close-knit class. Many of us had campaigned together. We were, those of us from the swing districts, and those of us who were supported by Emily's list. And but you win, and you immediately, the Democratic caucus, and actually the House altogether, they have you come for orientation. And so this is like 1 week, actually less than 1 week after Election Day. So there were people who came without even having the results be final for their races. And you're thrown into the deep end in terms of figuring out what it all is. And there's not enough time between November and January to figure it all out, right? But they also sent us to the Kennedy School at Harvard for kind of like a 1 week crash course on everything. But so much of it is learning on the job, and it's learning from members who have been there longer, from staff, and I guess, yeah, I mean, staff of all different kinds, not just your own staff, but staff at every different level who have been there for longer, and just trying to figure it out as you go. And I had so many incredible mentors, and I'm so grateful for what I learned.
Well, super. I mean, I always think that's just the craziest thing, because all of a sudden you have to go do this other job, and you're not really ready for it.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a little bit.
There's terrible campaigners, and some people are great campaigners and terrible legislators.
Right. So you write in your book, basically, I mean, your story is really starting with, how you physically survived your abusive marriage, which is just, it's unbelievable, but it's something that, many women can actually relate to. Let alone the experience, of your ex-husband unleashing the revenge porn. I mean, it's just, it's beyond, what a lot of us can imagine. Once you were in Congress, do you remember, or did anything stand out in terms of any kind of misogyny or sexism that you experienced while you were there?
While I was there? Oh, sure. All the time. There were, and actually a lot of it was benevolent, or at least benevolent's the wrong word. It was not malintended, but It was just, there were just a lot of and I'm sure you have just experienced this for your entire career.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of the older men who would just say these things that were either, condescending or totally inappropriate. And you're just like, these are in leadership positions. You're like, you can't say that anymore. And so, I think you would have, for example, you would have witnesses when you were in hearings, for example, who would just totally treat you differently as a woman and as a young woman than they would male members. You would have, largely it would be on the Republican side, I feel like, that would just be disrespectful or dismissive. And on our side, I would say it largely ended up being, they didn't even realize that they were saying something that was offensive or stupid or, gross, and yet they were. So that happened constantly. which is I think it's still be bizarre because you're all doing the same job. You're supposed to be doing the exact same thing. Right.
Well, you also mentioned how close your freshman class was, which is cool because those are it's not like college or high school. I mean, it's something that bonds you, I think, for life. Tell us about the sisterhood in your 2018, or 2019, yes, congressional class. How did you all, as women, how did you support each other as freshmen? Because you're all, again, in this brand new world.
Yeah, well, so my roommate, this was important from early on. I had a roommate who was also a woman, one of the youngest women, and one of my freshman colleagues, Lauren Underwood. And that was just a tremendous support for both of us. We would come home and, it's an isolating experience to be in this job. There are very few people who know what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, even among your colleagues. Of freshmen, there's a small number. Of people who are in these swing districts, there's an even smaller number. And of women, there's an even smaller number. So you just kind of, it narrows down to these common experiences, the number of people who have been through them. And so we would just decompress in the way that you would, I think, with anyone who's who goes through things similarly to you, and kind of just talk about the implications of it and how we were coping with it, and what we were doing and things that we were concerned about. And but that was bigger than just the two of us, right? That was something that spread across the entire freshman class. And we also had women who had been there for longer, who were mentors and really took us under their wing. And one woman in particular, who we all kind of, I think, thought of as our aunt or something, is Lois Frankel from Florida. She is just amazing. She has, even while we were running, she basically just kind of took us all under her wings, and she would text us, and that support is just so important. And we still stay close.
That's great. That's great. I was going to ask you that, is like, how are you, your sisterhood, are you still, you're still supportive, and you're still, you live all over the country, so you don't have to be in DC, to be close.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough because I'm not in it anymore. Right. So I'm not going through the same things that they are. But I can certainly be empathetic. And, it's interesting because, and I think people are adjusting to this everywhere, when you're not in close proximity, how are you keeping those relationships going? When when a lot of relationships in the workplace happen from passing each other in the hallway and just chatting for a few minutes, you don't have that opportunity anymore. It's like an intentional phone call. And when your schedule is just jam packed, that often kind of falls by the wayside. And so, I think just generally speaking, a lot of us are looking forward to being back in DC. DC is a place that is full, it's built on in-person kind of meetings and coffees and drinks and, everything like that. So it'll be nice when we can start seeing each other.
I agree. Oh, I agree. So kind of like I have a couple of bents directions we can go here, but the thing I wanted to ask you, I guess that as people are asking me, basically, as I'm talking about this event, and of course, plowed through your book, the decision to actually resign, the first thing that people seem to say to me, and I'm sure to you, is, oh, men wouldn't have done it. Men would have stayed. There's that double standard, which of course we know a lot of men stay when there's any kind of, sexual scandal. Are you getting that still, or is that something that you kind of sometimes wonder, should I go back and try to replay that in my head? Is there other choices I could have made?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's something that has haunted me sometimes, especially when the Republican won the seat, right? Like when he won in the special election, and everything that we worked so hard for flipping that district was lost. And I'm just hoping beyond hope that it flips back to a Democrat in November. But it was, and I have to, and this is, it's always a longer conversation than one that you can explain in a 30-second soundbite if you're being interviewed on TV or something. But in the book, I talk about, there is this whole component of abuse, right? I was coming out of this abusive this abusive marriage, and then suddenly you have this just onslaught of these images that are being released, and it brings you straight back into that abuse, right? And now it's suddenly on the public stage in this way that there did not seem to be an end in sight. They were just doing more and more every single day. It was my ex in conjunction with local Republican operatives and with the right-wing media. And they had this threat of saying, we have more, we have more, we have more. And I didn't know what that was, right? So there's that. There was the, my own mental health around it. I mean, just like so many women who are victims of cyber exploitation, I was seriously considering, I seriously considered suicide. And I talked about that in a New York Times op-ed, and then also in the book. And then I also felt like I was a liability to my colleagues as we were going into impeachment in particular. I felt like, my credibility was tarnished. So my leadership roles were, I don't know. I think that self-doubt, right? Like that is something that I think a lot about in terms of would a man have even felt that, or the guilt, or the, the responsibility to other people. I don't know that that's as present in their minds. And I think we see that it isn't, right? But yeah, no, I don't know that there is a right or wrong decision. it's the only option I felt like I had at that point. And there were so many things that went into it. But it's one of the biggest reasons that I decided to start my PAC. I decided to write the book. I decided to be, to continue to be engaged is to make sure that it wasn't all for nothing. Right. And that the people who supported me and the work that was done is something that I can still continue to do, even if it's in a different capacity.
Well, and you mentioned something that's really, really important, is that it was right for you. I mean, you could get lots of opinions, what you should do, but what you were experiencing and what you needed. And, no one else could have made those decisions, and maybe even in the same different way. But I think that's what people really admire you for, is that because you knew what was right for you, not your district, not constituents, not, anybody else, it was all, it was, you had to come first in this situation. So now what would you mean? I know we're sort of, I don't know, trying to look at the time. What's the one advice you would give to women now? I mean, in terms of jumping into electoral politics, I mean, we're this close to the next presidential election. So people are maybe thinking about, school board, or at least in Missouri, all of our, municipal elections are in off years. Local mayor, that kind of stuff. Or even jumping into a legislative seat, in the next cycle. So what's your advice? I mean, to other people other women who are considering doing this, what's the first thing they should do, and what's the thing they should remember?
Well, let's see, a couple things. One is, since I did it kind of, there were basically 2-3 weeks passed from the time that I even first contemplated running till I decided to announce, because I picked a date where I wanted to, if I was going to do it, I decided I wanted to announce on International Women's Day. And that also happened to be the day after the election for the ballot measure that I had been working on. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to prepare for anything, right? But what I will say to women and to really anyone who's thinking about running is that if you know that this is something that you're contemplating or you want to consider, you can start to think about, like, you're going to have to be a good bragger. That's one of the biggest challenges that especially that women have, is to even start seeing ourselves as, we are good at this. We are qualified. We are capable. We're strong. We're intelligent. We're as qualified and as have every single qualification, I guess, as a man that would be jumping into this. But we need to kind of convince ourselves and talk ourselves up on that. So that is sort of a big part of the pre-work that needs to happen, and that doesn't mean ignore your weaknesses, right? So if you, for example, if you've never fundraised before and you're going to have to fundraise to be in politics, figure out a way that you're going to, start thinking about your ask, start thinking about your elevator pitch. I had someone who's, she was a supporter of mine. She's running for a local election or a local office now. And I told her, I was like, well, give me your elevator pitch. And it's, those are the things that you've really got to kind of nail down. And I think that, knowing that stuff is going to come your way and being able to anticipate it in advance is something that I kind of wish I'd done more of. Right. I don't know. I mean, for me, it was always like, yes, that could happen, but you don't really think it's going to happen. Right. And especially with the complexities of being in an abusive relationship like that. But I don't know. I think that what I say is get yourself as ready as possible so that when that door opens, when you see that opportunity, you can walk right through it.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing. I mean, a lot of times it's pretty lonely too. Do you remember those thoughts of, nobody can tell you if you should or you shouldn't? And
oh yeah.
And you're right in terms of, we women have to learn to again, sell ourselves. I mean, it's all, I mean, it feels like it's like PR 100% of the time.
It is. And it is, right? I mean, and for me, coming from the nonprofit sector, I had, I'd done fundraising before. I supported a mission and been able to kind of sell that concept, right? But to switch it over and for it to, I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that supporting me was in fact part of a bigger mission. It wasn't about me, right? It was about what we're fighting for. And once you can kind of get past that, it's not about you, it's about what you're going to do for the community. Then you can get a little bit more comfortable with it. A lot more. But
you're right. I mean, you still have to, I think we always, need to keep comparing ourselves to, other people that are jumping in, because it's like, they don't have there's some extra skills or talents other people don't have. I mean, you have the same. I mean, even a man. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you remember that first door that you knocked, or even those first couple of phone calls you had to make, and you're just like, can I do this? And then it just becomes, so routine. But it's I'd love to see more women like us, not hesitate. Of course, it's easy for us to say now, right? Because we've already done it. Right. You mentioned something a little bit about your previous nonprofit dealing with homelessness. How has the past year, particularly your experiences being in and now out of Congress, changed your policy and advocacy focus? Did it change it much or a lot?
No, I think it expanded it, right? And I think that was a natural in terms of running for Congress and working on a variety of issues. But then once in light of my resignation, and I think everything that kind of came with it, I felt like I needed to specifically champion women and women running for office and trying to kind of level the playing field and get us to the point where we can achieve true equality and be equal in all positions of power. And so I think, that wasn't necessarily something I always cared about that. Of course, I always considered myself a feminist, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought that was the kind of direction I would have taken. But I feel so committed to that. And, we've just been hearing this quote a lot more since Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. But when people asked her, when will there be enough women on the court? And she said, when there are 9. And I think about that all the time, right? And it's because we've had men in power for so long For us to even just get to parity probably isn't enough. And we're so far from that.
Oh, exactly. And you feel it too. Don't you remember? I mean, being on the House floor, when you look around and you go, there's really not that many of us women. And of course, some are on the other side of the aisle, and you just like, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why those women were on the other side of the aisle. Didn't you?
Still, I think about that, and I don't
understand.
I don't have a lot of nice things to say about it. So
well, I don't understand, because it's because of the advance. You mentioned Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's because of things that she did that allowed all of us to run for office, regardless of party, and and yet they're kind of supporting so many things that are would take us women backwards.
And I think it really is. So much of it comes down to internalized sexism and internalized misogyny. And I hope, what we're seeing, in terms of demographic trends, is that younger women are leaning more and more in a liberal or progressive direction. So I'm hopeful that over time, it is right. Like the Republican Party is becoming more and more male. Women are just leaving the party in large numbers, but those who are still there, sometimes I'm just like, I don't understand you. Right now, I can say I don't personally know a woman who identifies as a Republican anymore. I know a lot who did, but who, now are pretty much all like, I was a Republican, or maybe I am a Republican, but I'm not voting Republican anymore. Granted, I live in California. I don't think but I don't know. It's changing. I think it really is changing.
Well, and you brought up a good point. I mean, in terms of, Republican women are or tend to be leaving their own party in terms of voters. Tell us what you're doing now. I mean, all of us I'm especially feeling the pressure of I'm losing track, 40 days until we've got to go. And then of course now with RBG gone, we've got this whole, Supreme Court, issue. I mean, we're just, it's like overwhelming. Missouri is going to be a red state. We've been a red state since 2004. We were close on 2008 with Obama, but we've lost all of our Democratic statewide. And now we're basically a true red state, both houses in the legislature. So it's just that feeling of what can one person do? So tell me what, help me, what are you focused on, like right now with these days left?
So I have my own, obviously my own platform and what we're doing with Her Time, the PAC that I started and everything like that. But when people ask me, and I just was having this conversation with my friend, she and I have been best friends since junior high, and she lives in Colorado now. And we actually literally in high school, we read The Handmaid's Tale together. And so, when this whole thing with the Supreme Court has happened, we've just been talking, nonstop. And she asked me exactly that. She's like, what? I don't know what I can do. And I was like, listen, you're in Colorado. You're in a state where the Senate, that is a seat that we need to pick up in the Senate. We need to get Cory Gardner out of there. And so I said, the most important thing that you can do is literally make a list of all of your friends, every single person that that's in that state, actually anywhere that could be in play, I guess, and ask them, literally call them and say, are you registered to vote? No? Okay. Here's how we're doing it. Let's do it while we're on the phone. I mean, it's like, you can be that annoying friend right now. That is just be annoying. This is a time to be annoying. If that's something get over that hurdle. And then, one of the things that I really worry about is that people who are, they're especially general election voters they don't often plan out how they're going to vote. So many of us are really activated, right? We know all the changes that are happening with COVID and how, what it's going to take to vote by mail. But many think, oh, well, I show up at the same polling place I've been going to for the last 20 years. I know where it is, and I'm just going to go there. But that's not going to be the case now, right? Most of those polling places aren't going to be there. And so even if the people are registered, do they know how they're going to vote? Do they have a plan to? Have they checked their polling place? Is all of their information up to date? And I've literally been making people do it with me on the phone. And my friend was talking about doing, voter registration Zoom parties and, like filling out the ballot. I saw someone else was hosting one of these. It's like, when you get your ballot, let's all fill it out together so we can talk about the different choices and everything. And
great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be good for everybody. But what I will say, even in a state that's red, we want to minimize how much Trump wins by, right? So every single vote is going to count. And, I think we're going to see some surprises. I really do. I think that there are going to be some that people think is solidly red and that he's either not going to win or he's going to win by a very small margin. And that matters, especially when we think about how he's going to challenge the likelihood of him challenging the results of the election if he loses. So the bigger the margin, the better. And there's no state that's too red for people to get mobilized in.
Is there a state that rises to the top of your list? I mean, we're always looking at, which of those swing states are, and of course now it's all about the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
along with defeating Donald Trump, but it's the Senate.
Yeah. I mean, I think that personal relationships matter more than, a single state. I think it's where people, right? But because I just think that that's so much more effective than cold calling, strangers. If I swear, if we all talked to every single one of the people we knew, there's a reason, like, they recognize that you're an expert, right? You're informed in a way that they aren't. Actually, I was just talking to some folks from American University earlier, and they said that they had research that shows that women under 40 in particular, say that one of the reasons that they don't vote is because they feel like they don't know enough. Yet these women watch the same exact amount of news. They consume the same amount of news as the men do, and men never cite that as an issue for not voting. So, if we can help kind of overcome some of those barriers, right? If we can, help make sure people feel like, yeah, you do know enough. Trust me, you know enough, and I think that makes a difference too.
Well, I like what you're saying, Katie. You're giving. I'm brainstorming while you're talking in terms of it's the sisterhood. I mean, and like you said, I've always encouraged people to reach out to their own networks first, because we always think we have to go to another precinct or another part of the city or whatever. No, it's our own friends. I mean, one of my races, I had one of my donors who didn't bother to vote, and it was an election I lost. So it's in ourselves. I mean, the people that we do know. So I really like what you're saying. And I like this whole sisterhood idea, because, we're seeing the whole, suburban women stuff. I mean, of course we see it every cycle, but this is it, I think, isn't it? Don't you feel like RBG completely lit us on fire? I
do. I really do. And we saw the numbers with that in terms of Democratic fundraising is like 160 million over the weekend went just to Democratic through Act Blue, like just over the one weekend. So I think it did light us up, but there are also so many people who don't know what that translates to. And they're like, well, I'm going to vote, but how else can they do it? And if you've got somebody, it really is like lighting a fire, or a snowball. And if you call your friend who, and then you're like, okay, well, you've got 2 daughters. Are they voting? Have you made sure they're registered? Do you know, how, do they know how to? And have they changed their address if they've moved? Like it's really kind of basic, but it's also so important. And I think that if we're doing that on a large scale, it's what's going to make the difference. There's a place for cold calling, right? There always is. But I think that one of the things that I learned from campaigning was that you got to write your personal network down, right? Like that's the first bit of fundraising. You go through your phone, you find your address book, you find every single contact you've ever had since grade school, and you end up calling them and you ask them for support in some way, whether it's their vote or for money or for, volunteering or whatever. And I think that that's what we need to be thinking about now. You write down everyone in your phone, you write down what state they live in. Like, you probably haven't called them there are some that you probably haven't called in a while. This is a great excuse to call them, just catch up and be like, oh, by the way. But yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really important part of it this time around.
Well, I think, I'm really glad that you talked about this, because that's what Progress Women does. Right now we're reaching like 10,000 people throughout, and we're statewide, even though we have, we're heavy in St. Louis area. But it's
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at all of the voting questions.
Yeah.
You push out so much of how to do it, how to do it early, and we don't have early vote in Missouri. It's absentee, and then now with COVID, it's absentee in person, and the
Oh,
ballot's
wow.
gotten a little bit more complicated in terms of
Yeah.
all the rules, and so I think
And so
you
people
hit
are
that
intimidated by
nail.
it. You might just throw it away.
Yes.
So.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So thanks for pushing me to think more about it's the sisterhood.
You got it.
All right. Are you ready for some some audience Q&A?
Sure.
All right. First,
Sure.
I want to thank you both for the incredible conversation, the inspiring conversation of and the work that you do, both of you, to get people informed, educated, getting them out to vote. So thank you both so much for doing that heavy labor. It is much appreciated from me and from, I hope, our entire audience.
Great.
So the first question is going to be from a neutral voter. So this is a question from David saying, shouldn't the next Supreme Court nominee be selected on their qualifications no matter what their gender is?
My take on that is, yes, I think that's generally speaking the standard, right? But my argument and the case I make in the book is that we have for so long elected men because they're men. And it's going to take a lot for us to try and balance that back out, right? We're only in recent decades of women even starting to kind of come to equality. And so I think, I'm not happy about any of the nominees that Trump is going to be putting forward, but I'm still happy that it's going to be, a woman, right? Like I just think that us getting to parity is absolutely critical and in every way. And it's something that is not going to happen without intention behind it.
And yeah, Katie's right. I mean, parity has to be intentional. I mean, it has to be forced. We're so pleased that Joe Biden has already said he would nominate not just a woman to an open seat, but to a Black woman, which is definitely needed. And I think what we've learned too from listening to all of the stuff lately on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life is the fact that she made a lot of rulings based on her lived experience. And we've got to get, parity is 50%, but we've got to get more women there because so many of these rulings that we've got facing us, right, Katie, particularly, where all we're hearing about is Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
And you have to have that lived experience to understand and know what that will mean to,
right.
over 50% of the population.
Yeah. And that's what representation is all about, right? If we're not represented at equal numbers to how we comprise the population, and that goes for ethnicity, it goes for gender, it goes for age, it goes for everything. I feel like you're not going to have a true understanding of what the impacts of those policies are. And I think that we've failed in a lot of ways by because of that lack of background, wealth, jobs, right? Like I think that for too long it's power has been held exclusively or nearly exclusively by wealthy older white men, and it's expanding, but it's not expanding fast enough, and it's going to take a lot of intentionality for us to change that.
Yeah. And I completely agree that yes, women have not had a voice for themselves for a very long period of U.S. history. So it is time for women to have the voice to control their own bodies and to be represented. So I completely agree with you.
Good, Shane.
Yeah, thanks. In case you were wondering.
We'd pick you up if you didn't.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, my question for both of you is about gaslighting, because I know that has been something that probably women deal with a lot more than even I have. But it especially seems to be something that is being pushed on voters now and being used as a tactic. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of feelings on like feelings or explanation for anyone that doesn't understand maybe what I'm asking. So.
Yeah. Well, so I talk about this, first of all, I think gaslighting has become common enough terminology at this point that most will get it. But gaslighting comes from basically it's psychological manipulation to make you basically think you're crazy for believing something, right? It's a tactic that abusers use constantly. So you question yourself and the validity of your thinking. An example is probably the easiest way of explaining it. My ex would do this all the time, where we would be, I would say something happened and it made me feel this way, and he would just turn the conversation around to the point where I ended up thinking that I did something wrong and apologizing and asking for his forgiveness. And that happens all the time, right? And so gaslighting is it's incredibly dangerous. It's subversive. It's something that you don't pick up on necessarily. And so we hear about that, I think, a lot in terms of what's happening with voters now is, for example, I'm trying to think of one and how it relates to the election, but it's convincing people that what they think is happening is not happening, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely. And I think we've all seen that, just through the COVID response,
Right.
since March, and I hate the word polarizing. I just hate that because it's, it makes you think that what you're seeing isn't right.
Right.
I mean, there's a right and a wrong way to think about science. I mean, science
Right.
is. It exists, and so to try to let people know that COVID's not going to get you, or it's a hoax, or it's just that these death rates don't even matter, even within our own state. You've got people believing these things because they're hearing these messages over and over. And in terms of the election, I think I'm really afraid too that voters are hearing, oh, my vote isn't going to count. Or they're going to throw out the absentees, so I better vote election day. Or no, there's going to be too much on election day. So, it's this back and forth of just, I think it's confusion too, isn't it? Purposely. Mm-hmm. And then you have to worry about all the threats from Donald Trump that he said he's not going to leave. I mean, it's just, it piles up. I think the gaslighting and the lies just pile up to where you just want to your choices are to, I'm not going to vote at all. I can't handle this stuff. Or, I'm just going to be all in and all crazy, and wherever that takes us.
Right.
I think it's extremely dangerous. And of course, I think we've seen it from our president since the beginning.
Agreed.
So what made both of you decide not to go quietly into the night and instead act up and fight and continue the fight that you were doing as elected representatives without having that position? So I think that you both could have probably re-entered the private sector of some variety and just been politically influential with your friends, but instead you decided to take these positions and fight for everyone, for the greater good.
Well, Stacey, you talked about this at the beginning, I think when we were still offline, but there's just too much to fight for. It's too big. It needs all of us. And even though we're not doing it in the same capacity that we were before, I think that I can't just walk away, right? I don't think that I could, maybe if I were able to disappear enough that I lived in a cave and didn't see any news, didn't have any clue what was going on around me, then I could just survive and not worry about what was going on. But I don't think that if I have any part in the world right now, then I know that I have to be doing something about it. And having experienced what I have in the homeless services sector and then in Congress and then after, the gaps are so clear. The problems are so blatantly obvious. And if you have some insight and a platform and an ability to organize, then I feel at least a responsibility to keep fighting.
Oh, exactly, Katie. I feel the same way in terms of responsibility. I think a lot of it is that we know too much. We know how it works. We know how, what the inside is all about. We know what the game is. We know what their strategy is. We know their end game. I mean, it's kind of like, my first career, I was a flight attendant for 14 years, and it took me a while not to get on an airplane and be in a flight attendant mode. It took me a while to learn how to be a passenger. But I don't ever want to go backwards in terms of not, doing the things that I know how to do. Mm-hmm. And you've done it too, Katie. I mean, you've mobilized, think about thousands of people, just to vote for you, to be on your team. And these people, and we both have stood up and argued and fought and given speeches and all that stuff, and people are still looking at us. Yeah, don't you feel that way, Katie? I mean, people are going, okay, now what do I do? And you're like,
no, exactly. I mean,
myself, what do I do? But it's that responsibility of knowing too much and knowing what it has to take. And to me, it all comes down to elections. It all comes down to people voting. I mean, once you vote, then it's set for the next 2 years. Even in Missouri, all the votes are set the next 2 years. Right. People don't go into office and go, well, how am I going to vote on, on gun violence? No, you told them all. You told them all during the campaign how you're going to vote. Right. And of course, the party platforms are so set that it's done. And so to me, it's all about election day. And it's, like you mentioned, Katie, the sisterhood and all of our friends and, just educating our friends. I mean, hasn't that been interesting? Because you find some people that, I don't really deal with politics. And you're just like, you
don't get a choice anymore. I was talking to some colleagues earlier, and, they were asking the same kinds of things. And, they were like, what do you think the responsibility of this generation is? And I said, all of it. Like, you might not like the fact that it's here, and you might not like the fact that our political system is what it is, but it is, and we're here. And, if we don't do something, then no one else is going to. It's like, that's the option that we have. Or I don't think I said it on this one, but when I come from a family of first responders, and my mom's was an ER nurse growing up. She's in charge of a hospital now. My dad in law enforcement, and my whole family was in the military. And so, when there's a moment of crisis, and I think of us as being in a moment of crisis right now, you have three types of people. You have the people who freak out and freeze. You have the people who run away, and you have the people who run in. And we have to be the people who are running in. Otherwise, the whole place is going to burn down.
Well, and you did run in, Katie. Think about it. I mean, you were the one that ran in. I mean, when you said look around and nobody else is doing it, or you don't like the choices. And you're right. I mean, I really love that analogy because I feel responsible. I mean, I'm doing so much mask work, since March, because I finally realized, hey, I know how to sew. This is something I can do, so
props to you.
But I mean, it's like, didn't you feel like that way? Going back to the beginning of the lockdowns, it's like, well, what do I know how to do? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse, but, it's using our networks. It's just using every talent, skill, everything that we have learned how to do. And it's just, just like you said, Katie, it's being a responsible person, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question is I think so many people that I speak to about politics, and maybe this is just my personal experience, but I feel like a lot of voters are single issue voters, that they have found their party based on one declarative thing, be that abortion, be that LGBT rights, be it taxes, economy, whatever the case may be. When someone is only looking at one thing, how do you take them to the other? Like, how do we bring them to our side? I don't care about I don't care about bringing them to the other.
Yeah. So I have a really hard time with that one. You know what I mean? Like, especially with knowing how, abortion in particular has been used as a tool by the right, by the conservative right it's like effectively I there's a whole podcast series on it by Neiral. It's a 4-parter that everyone should listen to called The Lie That Binds. And it's basically how the GOP has weaponized, and the evangelical community has weaponized the issue of choice. And so that one just drives me nuts. But I think, I think we're at a point, honestly, where if people are so dug in on something where they're going to say, I don't care if everything is exploding around us, I only care about my taxes, or I only care about making sure that other people can't, that the government is going to step in and make sure that other people can't have abortions, even if, there's rape or incest, or, the child, that regardless of the situation, then I can't help you. I think we have to focus more on those who are less myopic, and who just need help voting, and who need to be encouraged. Honestly, at this point, if you can't look around and see how messed up things are, and you're really gonna die on that hill of abortion, then it's just that's not worth the fight right now. We've got enough other people who just don't have hope, or don't believe that their vote counts, or don't know how to vote, that we should spend our effort there. I don't know. Maybe. Well,
and I think Katie too. It comes down to values, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, right now it's about values. Where are you on racism? Where are you on misogyny? Where are you on, racial justice, criminal justice? Where are you on these things? I mean, and I think, Shane, when people tend to go back to, oh, well, but the economy is good for me, or, I don't want my taxes to go up, you're ignoring what is on fire. What's on fire is these things that we're seeing every day on television. That's what the protests are all about. And to me, it's values. And if you don't have those values, and if you're going to go, like you said, Katie, go to get stuck on abortion, my gosh, I mean, we have much bigger things
and you can
that are right in front of us. Yeah.
You can also be totally personally opposed to abortion. I don't care if you are, that's fine. You never have to get an abortion. The point is not getting involved, the government, that's not the role, right? That's what that's what is more important to you than 200,000 people dying, right now. I don't know. I just explode about that one a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's why when I get nuts when people want to talk about, well, everything's so divisive. Well, it's so divisive because we allowed it to happen. I mean, a certain number of people allowed Donald Trump to sit in the White House. I mean, that's where divisive comes from. So, we're never going to go back to, oh, everybody just gets along. And, the whole, I hate that phrase, kind of work across the aisle, particularly in Missouri, when it's clear cut where values are. It's clear cut in the legislature. And I always tell people, what do you want me to compromise on?
I know.
To go over, I mean, what do you want me to say? That's okay. Yeah, sure, I'll go along. It's really not about, being friends with everybody and getting along. I think we're at a crux here. It's standing up for these values and for the tenets of democracy. I mean, I really think that's what is completely on fire. So you're right, Katie. Let the people that are stuck on something stay stuck, because there's way more work to be done.
I have another thing that's starting right now.
Yes, I was about to end. So yeah.
Yeah, no. So but thank you so much for hosting this. It was great. So great talking to you, Stacey, and nice to meet
Katie.
you.
It's fun.
And thanks for everyone for joining.
We can do it again. Hopefully under more fun. More fun.
Good. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
A reminder to the audience that the book is available for sale at left-bank.com. You can get a copy for you, for your friends, for your political opponents, your political friends, whatever the case may be. We have the book available for sale, and your support means a lot to us. I want to thank you, Stacey, for always being a supporter of the store, for being a voice of reason, for being a loud voice of reason. So thank you so much for being you and for doing this event with us.
Well, great. Thank you, Shane. I'm going to make a little plug. We talked about Progress Women a little bit. ProgressWomen.com. You can find us on there, all over Facebook and Twitter. But it's, we're social justice, and we just, we need more people basically to show up November 3rd, for the right values.
I just put that in as a comment. So
good. All right. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Shane.
you.
Thanks to everyone. It's really been fun.
Yeah. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.